Greetings, dear listeners. Today is another day. We have a February 5th, 2022 Sabbath day with Michael in Germany. We're doing a script that Michael's put together. This script was originally done in German, and Michael had met with Jörg Lissman and made videos already in German on this script, and Michael proposed the idea of doing the script with me in English some months ago, and here we are today on the 7th session. Michael, welcome.
Yeah, welcome, Brad. Hello, dear listeners. Yeah, because it's not only about conspiracies, but it's about the conspiracy of the 35th President of the United States, Mr. George Fitzgerald Kennedy. Therefore, I was interested in that matter for dozens of years, actually. And then it turned out it had all the religious background, and therefore we had 6 sessions before where we went from the biblical history over Julius Caesar, over then to the actual situation on the last century about Kennedy. And therefore I would like to welcome you again in to have a biblical view on conspiracy. This is session 7. And in this session 7, we will go into a little bit more of a background information, because there is something in common with Kennedy and other presidents, and it's not what you might think. I know there are many other coincidences, which are no coincidences at all, but let's face it, I have to act according to the script of the Bible, and I have to talk according to my script, which I prepared. So therefore, let's have a go. Session 7. Mr. Kennedy, who was a businessman, and I said, a businessman, yeah, he making money out of everything. There was another guy who ran for the office of being President of the United States. His name is Alfred Emmanuel Smith, or L. Smith, or Alfred E. Smith. He lived from 1873 to 1944, an American politician and former governor of New York, of the state of New York. In 1928, he was being a candidate for the Democrats, the same party as Kennedy was being a member of. But he was losing against Herbert Hoover, and he was the first Catholic candidate of one of the two big parties. And he has, as well as Kennedy, Irish ancestors. Now, that's what we have to really notice here. He has ancestry from Ireland as well as Kennedy has. So 1980, he was being elected as the governor of New York. He was the first Irish American who had that position. But of course, he lost because 1928, it was much too soon for a Catholic to become American president, of course. Yeah, we switch this. Oh no! Now I know. It's months ago. So there is also somebody else, which is called Mr. Bernays, and Mr. Bernays is somebody who has written a book about propaganda, and he had an influence on the former German minister for propaganda, a certain called Joseph Goebbels. And Mr. Bernays says in his autobiography that Joseph Goebbels was using his book called Crystallizing Public Opinion. He has used that book to develop anti-Jewish propaganda in the National Socialist Nazi Germany. It's very interesting. Because in a biography of an idea, Memories of Public Relations Counsel, Edward L. Bernays, who was a nephew of Sigmund Freud, by the way, the biography of an idea, page 6152, he mentions a certain Karl von Wiegand. Karl von Wiegand, foreign correspondent of the Hearst newspaper, an old hand at interpreting Europe and just returned from Germany, was telling us about Goebbels and his propaganda plans to consolidate Nazi power. Goebbels has shown Wiegand his propaganda library, the best Wiegand has ever seen. Goebbels, said Wiegand, was using my book, Crystallizing Public Opinion, as a basis for his destructive campaign against the Jews of Germany. This shocked me, but I knew any human activity can be used for social purposes or misused for antisocial ones. Obviously, the attack on the Jews of Germany was no emotional outburst on the Nazis, but a deliberate, planned campaign. And this very Alfred E. Smith is the background of that very famous Alfred E. Smith Memorial Foundation dinner. This is from some years ago, seeing on the left, of course, Hillary Clinton, and on the right, Donald Trump. And in the middle is the man who really got the power. That's the Archbishop of New York. And now you can exchange that position with the current one. And it's the same position again. So you see, the candidates are exchangeable, but the policy and the position and the hierarchy absolutely, Brad, stays the same.
That's correct. Yes, it does.
So for the memory of Alfred E. Smith, who was the first Catholic to apply for the presidency, yeah, there is the Alfred E. Smith Memorial Foundation dinner. Yeah. And about L. Smith, we find that following remark. I had always been impressed with the sincerity, straightforwardness, and frankness of L. Smith. Some matter brought me to his office, a huge director's room, all leather and wood paneling, to confer with him alone in the great new Empire State Building, of which he was president. Ah, interesting. That's the building, Brett, where they were picturing this with the King Kong and the blonde lady in the beginning of 1930s. Yeah, that was then the biggest, the tallest building in New York, if I remember correctly.
Yep, that's right.
And what some people might not know is that they had a plane attack in the Empire State Building as well in the Second World War. But of course, that building did not crumble. Some people might not know that. I think it was a fighter plane, Empire State Building, plane accident. Yes, plane crash actually. Yeah. See that?
Wow.
1945 Empire State Building B-25 crash. While flying in thick fog, the accident caused the death of 14 people, 3 crewmen and 11 people in the building, and damage estimate as $1 million equivalent to 14 million in 2020, although the building's structural integrity was not compromised. Ha. And it was burning as well.
Yep, that's right.
Sure. You see? Some coincidences, one coincidence after another coincidence. Yeah. So L. Smith was the president of that Empire State Building. His personality made for free and easy interchange without the usual preparatory amenities. Governor, I said, it must give you a great satisfaction to be president of the Empire State Building Corporation. You have been governor of the greatest state of the Union, the Empire State. Now you are president of the corporation, owning the largest structure in the world. He answered me disdainfully, quote, Mr. Bernays, I am janitor of the Empire State, unquote. So this is the one who wanted to become the first American or the first Irish American Catholic president in 1928. Afterwards, he was still governor, and then he was also the president of the Empire State Building Corporation. And this Mr. Bernays, who interviewed him, which was a nephew of Sigmund Freud, and he was deep into propaganda, he also was Jesuitically trained afterwards in the 1950s, if I remember correctly, at the Vatican. He was being mentioned in the Swiss newspaper, NZZ, New Zurich newspaper. He was being the secret deceiver and being named as the Pope of Propaganda. Yeah, he was dying at the age of 102 in Cambridge. A master of manipulation, how Edward Bernays has changed our consume culture with the dedicated propaganda work. So that is not very nice. And Mr. Bernays says we were being governed by people which names are not common to us, which we haven't heard, like puppet players. And also this German propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels, in the Second World War, he was Reich minister for, yeah, for more or less for deception, not for education and propaganda. This is official, but actually it's deception and propaganda. And he wanted to become a priest. He was being Jesuitic trained in the Netherlands in Kerkrade because he wanted to become a priest. He was studying literature and philosophy, among others from the honorable Jewish literature scientist, Mr. Professor Friedrich Gundolf, and was promoting at the Ruprecht Karls University with a dissertation, etc., etc., under the surveillance of the Jewish professor Freiherr von Waldberg. Yeah, so much about it's all against the Jews, huh? So also this guy has a Jesuitical background, the German propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels. Yeah, remember that was the one with the big library, where then Mr. Carl Regan says, oh yeah, I've never seen such a big library as when I was visiting Goebbels, and he had that book, Crystallizing Public Opinion, so how to shape the public opinion. And that's the same concept we are facing today in 2022. That's why I would like to mention it, because it's also about then this Alfred E. Smith. Then that's also a small connection to Alfred E. Smith. Yeah, so that was education and propaganda, but it is more or less George Orwell newspeak, a minister for special tasks. And you see that nowadays our government has been staffed with people of specific tasks, but not usually. It has nothing to do with truth. And so therefore it was mandatory to have that radio apparatus in the 1930s, the propaganda of the 20th century. It's been called the mouth of Goebbels. Yeah, so everybody could afford, everybody was also only allowed to listen to German radio. All other things were named enemy propaganda. So if you would be caught that you were listening to Radio London, for example, you could get to jail. That's a kind of censorship, huh? And what turned out in the Second World War to be just a small radio transmitter turns out to be a more than larger than life 4K, 8K, whatsoever cinema at home. So you will be bombarded with propaganda, not only in the audio way, but also visibly. So in the vision, yeah. So that you receive a vision from far away, and you believe that everything which tells the big brother here with the big monitor means surveillance, is putting out in front of you as so-called news or checked news or what else. It would be necessarily the truth, but it has nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with that. Edward Bernays, yeah, has a famous quote, and that's also a quote which would be very fitting to that special series here, because it also would have a combination, or it would also have importance for Kennedy and politics in general. His famous quote is, "The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. This is a logical result of the way in which our democratic society is organized. The true ruling power of our country is, according to the one who has published that book on propaganda, is an invisible government. And that's more or less the same that some people claim to be the military-industrial complex. And it's more or less that what Mr. John F. Kennedy
look at the bottom of this. If you don't mind, Michael, I can read.
Please do. Please
in almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct, or our ethical thinking. Yes, ethical thinking. We are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who understand the mental process and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting there.
That's spot on.
Sure is.
Yeah, so 1928, Mr. Smith was the first Catholic who was been nominated from one of the big parties of the United States as a presidential nominee. And he lost with 41% against 58% very clearly. But there were anti-Catholic policy. He would listen more to the Pope in Rome, but to the Constitution of the United States. And that was leading to his loss. Empire statesman. Can make it a little bit more convenient. The rise and redemption of L. Smith. That's the reason why they are celebrating him even today.
Oh, by the way, Michael, as long as we just touched on Edward Bernays, I just thought I'd quick mention, if you don't mind. There's a documentary called The Century of the Self, and the first episode, Happiness Machines, Hour 1, it was released in 2002. It's a 1-hour documentary. I suggest everyone go check that out and get an idea of, where we're coming from here. This is a fantastic piece that was put together to kind of expose, what kind of, I don't know, Michael, it's just no better way to actually get an idea of how things have come about than to study history. And I think there's a lot of media that's very confusing. And this is some media that kind of clarifies a few things for Americans. I'm speaking for, the people that live over here in the States and those in Europe too, for that matter, because, Daryl Eberhardt, whom we're meeting with every week here on the Sabbath, that he has mentioned to us multiple times that, we who live in the United States, we are history challenged people more than those in Europe, actually, because Europeans are more accustomed to a long history with the Jesuits and the Pope, and we are not here in the States. Not necessarily, and we could be, but pretty rare, Michael, I think. Pretty rare to find people that actually know about their history over here in the States.
Yeah, and people are trained like dogs today. You see that they
Correct.
get used to rituals, they get used to everyday service, so that they take it as granted that everybody behaves the same.
Ritual. You couldn't say it more spot on, Michael, because ritual defines our way of life.
Yeah.
So if you can break those chains, so to speak, that traditional and what else? There's so many different aspects of that. Look up Colossians 2:8 and read all about it. Think for yourself on this stuff, because there's a whole world of deception, Michael, and we're trying to expose.
I wanted to mention Mr. L. Smith because of the Catholic background. You see, the United States was proposed or proclaimed to be founded as a Protestant country. And therefore, in 1928, so 240 years after the proclamation, more or less, they then had a Catholic candidate, which absolutely was against the idea of the creation of the United States. And so therefore, it is absolutely clear that the first anti-Catholic challenge that the Smith campaign took seriously came in April 1927, when the Atlantic Monthly published an article by Charles G. Marshall entitled "An Open Letter to the Honorable Alfred E. Smith." A graduate he was of Columbia University Law School and expert on canon law, he had spoken and written on the issue of Catholics holding political and judicial positions in this country, claiming that they should be barred from both because of their dual allegiance to the Pope and to U.S. state law. Yeah, and that's the problem which we later see with Kennedy as well. Yeah, but that's very important that you see that Kennedy and Alfred E. Smith had something in common. They both ran for the presidency. The one was successful, the other not, and they were both of Irish Catholic background. His primary argument was the traditional one that the Catholic's loyalty to Rome should preclude him from high office, but Marshall couched it with daunting scholarship, quoting encyclicals, and worked like the Catholic encyclopedia whenever possible. Many of his sentences ran between 10 and 20 lines apiece. Yeah, that's from that very book here, Empire Statesman, The Rise and Redemption of Alfred E. Smith. A Christian in the White House, yeah. Christian, okay. I cannot highlight it. I'm sorry. This is totally. Yeah, okay. So let's proceed. And then there was the Pope in 1928. A great many Americans honestly believed that if Al Smith became president, the Pope would come over and rule America. The American Standard headline: Rome suggested that Pope may move here, and in North Manchester, Indiana, a Klan lecturer warned his audience what to watch for, to beware of the imminent arrival of the Pope. He may be even on the northbound train tomorrow. He may. Be warned, prepare. America for Americans, etc. Yeah. One source held that plans had been drawn up so that the minute the election was over, the president-elect could send a battleship to Rome to bring the Pope to the United States. Yeah, these were the days, huh? These were the days. And now compare that with the mentioning of Catholics in the speech of Donald Trump, huh? It's quite the other way around.
Oh yeah,
it's the other way around. Huh? But of course, they are just
but that's politics.
100, you know. 100 years apart, huh? 1928 to 2022.
Well, that's the trouble there, Michael, is the connection between church and state.
Yeah,
actually having both walking hand in hand. How can two walk together lest they be agreed?
Oh, then you look at the flag of the Vatican. They can do that perfectly.
Well, that's the thing, Michael, here in the States, in politics, they don't look at the connection between church and state because the churches are basically Catholic in doctrine without the people knowing it.
Yeah. Yeah, you got the threefold crown, heaven, earth, and hell, and you got also the silver key. Silver stands for the silver coin, so for the material goods, and the gold is the spiritual things, the spiritual bound, the materials, and it's all been bound by blood. It's all been bound by the Roman Catholic Church. So there you go. So that means that there is material, and these are the total rulership of the entire world. Yeah, nothing could be loosened here. You see, everything is being fixed. Yeah. Okay, so what I was mentioning here, that I came across that extremely famous so-called Christmas movie called It's a Wonderful Life by Frank Capra. You might know that. I don't know. It is very prominent here. It's from 1946, starring the main actor is James Stewart. And on that, you see here a newspaper in which is the headline, Smith wins nomination. Yeah, you see that even in that Catholic Christmas movie, yeah, you find a subtle indoctrination. This is a movie from 1946 depicting here a newspaper of 1928 with Alfred E. Smith, who wins the nomination to run for president. What a coincidence. So this is Hollywood. You see, that's a subtle indoctrination. Yeah, you see, I don't know if you know that movie, Brett. Yeah, it's very famous here. It's a Christmas movie of somebody who wants to end his life by killing himself because he went broke. He could not afford to feed his family. And then he's standing on the bridge, and all of a sudden here comes his protectionist guardian angel called Clarence, who wanted to earn his wings because he's only an angel of second class. You see Catholic propaganda everywhere. And then he says, oh, I will show you your life if you would never have been born. And then everything is a mess. And he says, oh, please, I want to have my life back. And in the end, of course, they all are celebrating Christmas. What else would you expect from a Catholic propaganda movie? And there, what else would you expect from a Catholic propaganda movie?
Michael, that's a spin on the Christmas Carol. You know about this, or what was the name of this famous play that we did when we were children? You know, the Christmas Carol play?
Yeah.
You do, right.
Charles Dickens, I think, yeah.
Right. So it's just a spin-off on that, isn't it? Sure.
Yeah, okay, but you see, this is a big Hollywood movie, famous for over 70 years now, and everybody's smiling, and then the end, a bell rings, and the girl says, yeah, I know, our teacher has told us, every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all propaganda, the entire movie.
Yes. No, I'm not familiar with it, but I am familiar with the script of A Christmas Carol because we did that script as children in our church.
Yeah, and this is the English title is It's a Wonderful Life, 1946, James Stewart. Yeah, please help me, I want my life back. Yeah, and then we received a letter from a guardian angel. Yeah, a man who's got friends is never a loser. Thank you very much for the wings. All the best, Clarence. Yeah, of course. It's a Christmas present from a very good friend. Yeah, the Christmas present. Yeah, it's all Catholic propaganda. Here. All are happy. Yeah, one eye symbolism. Yes, of course. Ah, yeah. Yeah. You see? Oh, an angel gets his wings. Yeah, sure. Remember, no man is a failure who has friends. Yeah. Oh, Adolf Hitler also had a lot of friends.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and look what I got here. This is Joe Biden. Yeah, he says, I'm the only Irishman you've ever met who has never had a dream. Yeah, because he is your Catholic Irish American president. Oh, you got 3 Catholics.
He's saying, Dear Mr. Man of Sin, dear Mr. Man of Sin, I am an open vessel for you to work with. You can take anything of mine and it's yours because I'm fawning at your feet for mammon. I kiss your feet in private.
Yeah, but don't you find it a bit very weird that all 3 Catholic candidates for president, meaning Alfred E. Smith, John F. Kennedy, and Joseph Biden, are Irish?
Yeah.
All 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? The Bidens, it says here in German, okay, they are Roman Catholic and Irish American heritage. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to point out. You see, you have to see Kennedy in context with the Irish American community in the United States, and that's what we are going into now. So Kennedy's father, Mr. Joe Kennedy, he was getting not financial minister, and so he wanted to become president of the United States, which he could not become. Although all the former ambassadors to England will become American president, he did not make it because he had very, very pro sympathy for the Nazis also, and therefore he was being spied and nobody trusted him, and therefore he was just only 2 years as ambassador in the United Kingdom, Great Britain. But Kennedy was supporting Roosevelt and also somebody else. Yeah. So 1937 he was being mentioned, or he was being named officially as the ambassador in London. Therefore, he was on his way up and he wanted to become the president and he could not make it. Therefore, he had his 2 sons, Joe Jr. and John, which is John F. Yeah, John F. Kennedy. Yeah, in his embassy in London, yeah, and promoting them. When the Second World War broke out, he sent back his family to the United States in September 1939. You see, that was the beginning of the Second World War. Yeah. Then he was becoming persona non grata, yeah, and he was then having a relationship to Winston Churchill in May 1940 when he was becoming Premier Minister of the United Kingdom. Yeah, and so therefore he was being spied by the intelligence service MI5 because Churchill was thinking of him as being suspicious. Yeah. So he was then getting back to the United States after all, but he was having a good time with Churchill, and that has his causes. Mr. John F. Kennedy, who later became president, has personal contact to the director of the Office of Naval Intelligence, Alan G. Kirk, which means that also Mr. John Kennedy, of course, as the son of the ambassador, who was also employed in the embassy, he was being in touch with the secrets and so being a member of the Secret Service as well. Every ambassador is a Secret Service agent because he's being known of many state secrets. So he needs a security clearance. Yeah. And then it was very interesting because his oldest son, Joe Jr., should run for the presidency after the Second World War because the father of Kennedy, Joe Kennedy, could not make it because he was not that prominent or that high regarded much, so that he did not make it. But so therefore his sons, as a replacement for his ambitions, had to run for presidency, and it was being supposed to be his oldest son. But the problem is that his oldest son was being killed in a Secret Service mission in August 1944 during the Second World War, while secretly trying out with a bomber plane something which I cannot remember at the moment. But therefore, that was the month, August 1944. Since then, it was absolutely clear that Kennedy Sr., Kennedy father, so the patriarch, would do all the things he could to promote and to support John F. Kennedy as his second oldest son, and then its oldest son, because the oldest son has been lost in war, to run for presidency. That means that John F. Kennedy knew for more than 15 years that he had to run for presidency. So there were no accidents. Everything was being planned beforehand by his father. So he was under the thumb of his father at the time. Yeah, and his father was handing much money because he was making much money. He was much money promoting his son into the Senate and promoting his son and making publicity, as well as also his younger son, Robert F. Kennedy, the later state attorney, as a member of staff. So he was supporting his older brother, etc., etc. So it's a whole clan. Yeah, it's a whole dynasty, actually. It's a whole dynasty. Kennedy was being seen as a playboy. His lover, the actress Gloria Swanson, was also guest in his house as the actress Marlene Dietrich, etc., etc. Coming from Robert Dalek, John F. Kennedy, from Munich 2003. Now I have to look it up where we have. We will continue. About JFK and his father. His father says, quote, "I got Jack into politics," meaning John F. Kennedy means Jack. "I was the one." Kennedy told a reporter some years ago, "I told Joe," means Kennedy Jr., the son of JFK. "I told John F. Kennedy Joe was dead and that it was therefore his responsibility to run for Congress. He didn't want to. He felt he didn't have the ability and he still feels that way. But I told him he had to." So that means that John F. Kennedy had to run for presidency. He had to run for Congress. His father was a patriarch. There were no arguments. He had to. He didn't want it. John F. Kennedy wrote a book and this and that. He wanted to become something else, but not governor and also, but he had to. In the first campaign for the House in 1946, it was sometimes hard to tell who the figure on the way up actually was, the father or the son. Joe was on the telephone constantly. He checked every key decision. He supervised the cash box. According to Ralph Martin and Ed Plout, Kennedy enlisted his cousin Joe Kane to tutor his son. Joe Kane says, "It takes three things to win. The first is money, the second is money, and the third is money." John F. Kennedy filed his first nomination papers in Boston to run for Congress in 1946. He won the first test easily. Asked why the candidate's father had spent so heavily. Money, 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 because the root of money is because the love of money is the root of all evil. So if you want to run for a high office, if you want to run for the presidency even, it's all backed up by big money. Remember Donald Trump? Money, money, money. Has nothing to do with truth or abilities or talent or so. No, it is all about for money. In the race for the Senate in 1952, Joe Kennedy, so the patriarch, took personal command. A volunteer who had managed Jack's first two campaigns, Mark Dalton, began at the same post in 1952, this time as a paid worker. He had been at work just 2 weeks when the elder Kennedy stopped by to examine the books, disagreed with the way the money was being spent, and flew into a rage. Dalton quit and Bobby Kennedy, so the younger brother, Robert F. Kennedy, replaced him. When Bobby came in, a campaign worker remembers, we knew it was the old man taking over. What had Bobby done up to that time politically? Not a damn thing. All of a sudden he was there as a campaign manager waving the banners. Says another worker, sometimes you couldn't get anybody to make a decision. You'd have to call the old man. Then you get a decision. So it's all about that. When the drive for the White House began in earnest in 1958, Kennedy opened his checkbook wide, spending and raising millions over the next 2 years to elect his son president. Kennedy managed to raise 3 attractive, persuasive sons who come easily to leadership. Wealth makes the ride easier, it didn't guarantee it. Neither Jack nor Bobby Kennedy was enthusiastic for perfectly obvious reasons about their younger brother's decision to run for the Senate. Joe was and laid down the law, quote, you boys have what you want and everybody worked to help you get it. Now it's Teddy's turn. I'm going to see that he gets what he wants. So about Edward Kennedy. So it was all about the patriarchy. It was all about hierarchy. It was all about the so-called old man. And then Joe Kennedy suffered in December 1968 a severe, in December 1961, sorry, he suffered a severe stroke, leaving him partially paralyzed. So that means that if you go in the psychology a little bit of John and Robert Kennedy, who were at that time the president, that from December 1961, Kennedy was free of being under the suppression of his dad, actually. That's what my conclusion would be.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, so that means that from that on, also he could act more on his own. December 1961. Remember that 23 months later he was being assassinated. I like Kennedy, says an Irishman in Washington, but I have no illusions about him. He understands power. Everywhere he went, from Brum Boston to the court of St. James, he saw great hypocrisy about the philosophy of those who rule. Power is the end. Joe thinks like a king, and kings aren't always nice guys. There is a chapter about Winston Churchill and the Kennedys that many people would not be aware of, but that's just what this series is for, that you see that all the politicians in this world, they are not the average John Does, they are no average workers, they are not coming from an ordinary family, if you think so. They are at least educated in a special kind of way. And so therefore I went into why or where all the ties came and why it was that Alfred E. Smith, John Kennedy, and also Joe Biden were of Irish American heritage. And I ran across a website who says, okay, about Winston Churchill and the Kennedys, but before I go into Winston Churchill, it is about that many people flew to the United States about the Great Irish Famine. That famine was created by the British. Actually, we know that it was created by the church, so that millions of Irish would flee to Massachusetts and replace the chosen people who were working in the cotton mills. In 1846, Mexico donated 30 million acres to the best land in California to Father Eugene Mcnamara for a papal Irish colony. Coincidentally, Hibernia was suffering from a potato famine and millions were encouraged to emigrate. Coincidentally, sure. The rest of California was to be colonized by Mormons from Britain. Therefore, I went into that website because I was interested in that special Irish Jesuit priest Eugene Mcnamara, and that's why I have opened that website here. This is a book, a history book actually. It's called El Proyecto Mcnamara, the Maverick Irish Priest and the Race to Seize California, 1844 to 1846. The story of a maverick young priest from County Clare whose audacious bid to colonize much of California, including the San Joaquin Valley, with Irish families in the 1840s precipitated the Mexican-United States War. McNamara's Mexican project could have led to a founding of a new Ennis, New Clare, or even New Ireland, but it was thwarted by President Polk, whose forces seized California. So, the Catholics, they were trying to use a famine to settle there a bunch of people in the United States to increase the amount of Catholics in the United States. Do we see any resemblance nowadays to the situations of the Mexicans going with the so-called border and the wall that President Trump wanted to build? Yeah, that's it's interesting that it is a Jesuit Irish priest. Jesuit and Irish priest. I said, oh, that's a very interesting combination, especially when you think about that all the three candidates for presidency Catholic in the United States were Irish Catholics. Interesting, huh? Interesting. Yeah, so therefore you see that this is just a table of contents from that very book. Here, the first one is colonizers, missioners, traders or cannon. And then British agent or papal missioner. You see that a missioner, of course, Brad, because it's a Jesuit.
Right, right.
And so you don't have to read that entire book, that you know that, of course, it was always for the doctrine of the Pope to get America to be Catholic, to be a Catholic country. I remember about the figure of 2% of the people, of the inhabitants of the United States were being Catholic when it was founded, and now compare that to 2022, please. Sure. I think it is somewhere around 50% or so. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, it's up there. I don't know if it's that high, but it could be. Very well could be today. I don't know.
Yeah. Being New York, being Irish, yeah. 25 years of Irish America, New York University. Yeah, it's always the same. You see, they want to colonize the United States. Yeah, that's this book. And so they tried that in California. Now you know that also it was being the same in Boston. In Boston, there were many people were Irish origin, of course, and these Irish I wanted to say invaders, these Irish immigrants, actually, they are most of the parts were Roman Catholic. Roman Catholic. Yeah, and so that is the same with these missionaries as in Rome. The prefect of the missions directorate, Propaganda Fide, has also already ordered Clancy to resign and the papal gendarmerie to confinement to Rome. Yeah, Propaganda Fide Archives, Rome. Yeah, so that is more or less the head of all the secret societies or all the secret services of the world. Yeah, therefore, you see that British agent or papal missioners has something to do with the Monroe's doctrine, of course, that America wanted to rule his own government without the interference of some foreign states. And Monroe's doctrine is also against these secret treaties. They are not by coincidence secret treaties of Vienna, Verona, and Vichy, where they said they wanted to ridicule the Bible and they wanted to spread the Catholics all around the world. Yeah, you see, the Monroe Doctrine was forbidding any foreign country to influence or to be partaking of any American decision on that. That's so a coincidence that the Monroe Doctrine was a few years after the secret treaties of the 1820s. Yeah, these were the days. In 1967, America.
I just sent you an image.
Yes.
And that's just a quick rundown.
That's 23% at the moment, official numbers, okay.
2018, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You bet.
So this is from a book. In 1967, Mary Karam, a scholarly nun, traced Mcnamara, so that Irish Jesuit priest, to Killaloe Diocese, County Clare, Western Ireland in the years 1837 to 41. Ignatius Murphy, Vicar General and historian of Killaloe, added that the curate had been suspended for misconduct and had volunteered for the mission in Guyana, British sole South American colony. The British Guiana mission suffered a stormy schism. Mcnamara went to Roman protest. Pope Gregory XVI deposed his bishop, and later Pope Pius IX sent in Jesuit to grub out the weeds. A secret journal of events in Mcnamara's time was withheld from Jesuit novices. The Pope admitted his shame, and his church won the respect of the Guyana colony for its response to the scandal. I searched the British archives and many more close to bankrupt. The personal papers of Admiral Sir George Seymour, British Pacific Station, allegedly Mcnamara's co-conspirator. Yeah, it's about conspiracies, this series. Survive intact. He carried Mcnamara to a stranded British subject, enabling the priest to complete the project. Contrary winds prevented Seymour from reaching Monterey before the United States Navy occupied it. He could not raise Britain's flag nor make the bite he had wished. No known portrait exists of Eugene Mcnamara, who was 31 years old when he arrived in Mexico City in 1844. His character remains shadowy. Admiral Seymour judged him intelligent and straightforward. United States Consul Larkin told President Polk of his very good appearance and citizen clothes. Lieutenant Somerville, Collingwood's action commander, found his fellow Irishman a boon traveling companion, while Nathan Proctor, Seymour's Protestant's Irish chaplain, appreciated Mcnamara's clever and pleasant company, if not his politics or his church. Mcnamara was a maverick in the Texas sense, the unbranded, unclaimed steer in mid-herd. To be expelled from college and to be suspended 3 times by 3 bishops in 3 years was at very least misunderstanding on a grand scale. He traveled half the globe and routinely bounced back after adversity. Uniquely, he was accused of being Protestant Britain's Jesuit papal agent. He impressed Rome, the Archbishop of Mexico, the Admiral veteran of Trafalgar, naval officers of his own age, California officials, and British and United States diplomats. In the end, he secured his land and presumably some sense of purpose with it. So that sounds very much like a Jesuit to me. Coming from that book, El Proyecto Mcnamara, the maverick Irish priest and the race to seize California. Yeah, so America was to submit again to Spain. He also made up for, this is an extract here, for 200 years in which the authority of Rome's missionary watchdog, the office for propaganda fide, and the papal appointment of bishops had been banned in the colonial Americas. Once again, the office for propaganda fide, Rome's missionary watchdog. Page 17 of the book Colonizers, Missioners, Trades and Canon. Page 10 actually, not page 17, sorry. In the 1830s, young European priests and nuns volunteered for the mission in droves. Protestant ministers and lay missionaries with families formed societies comparable to Catholic religious orders. Pope Pius IX told Mcnamara's former bishop John Hines in 1852 that the, quote, missionary migration spirit of modern nuns, unquote, turns them into girandoles spinning fireworks. He also warned that the refuse of the clergy was being sent to the West Indies with exceeds given to bad priests to get rid of them, wolves, to other missions. Yeah, of course, the Vatican and the Pope always try to infiltrate the United States with their so-called agents. You see that the priests of the Roman Catholic Church are nothing but agents. It's in the word mission, actually. It's in the word mission. Where Protestant and Catholic met in the islands of Oregon, their feuding was better recorded than their sharing. The Jesuit De Smet and a Methodist missionary made firm friends as they traveled Oregon country together in the 1830s. You know that this Mr. De Smet was an educator of, I think it was Albert Pike. If I'm not
that sounds right, Michael.
Not mistaken, yeah.
Yeah, I think that might be right.
Yeah. U.S. Protestant missioners in Hawaii protested, however, clumsily at the ruler's cruel treatment of rival Catholic missionaries. Methodist and Jesuit insults exchanged between rival missionaries, etc., etc. So this is coming from that book. Yeah. It's just that Rome wanted to have America in its own possession, and they won't give up. And now you got your second Catholic president. The first officially was John F. Kennedy. Because, of course, Alfred Smith did not make it. It was much too early in 1928. But then came the Second World War, and America won. Yeah. Yeah, but that's the thing, you see, that they all have their agents, and their agents are the Jesuits, and they are missionaries. So please do not see them as priests only, but as sacred agents. And that will be very, very, very important for the future.
You got to think in line with the Council of Trent. Once you understand the implications that were laid down after the Reformation in the Council of Trent, then you understand what the Counter-Reformation's all about. And, this great battle that's been waged in the realm of politics between the two-tier system of Roman Catholicism against, what can we say, Reformed thought or Bible-based reasoning. Can we say that?
Yeah, you see that in that book here, at the receiving end of the colonies in the United States, Irish immigration was seen as a papal plot. Yeah, because the Irish immigration is not against Irish people in general, but against Catholicism. Yeah, don't judge the people by their skin or by their color or by their speech or by their race. It's just about that they did not want to have that much of Catholics, in my humble opinion. So propaganda fide, that's what it's all about. You see, to spread their propaganda. The office of the propagation of the faith, propaganda fide. An association for the propagation of the faith with branches in Dublin. This is Ireland and Ireland. And throughout Europe, disseminated funds, contact and news which kept missions in touch. This is a secret service network. The Austrian Habsburg, self-appointed Holy Roman Emperors, Napoleon abolished the originals, financed vicariates. Missionaries' excitements ran so high that rumors spread to and from California in 1836 that Pope Gregory was to set an example by visiting Ireland. Eugene Mcnamara joined a mission trail from a Paris seminary packed with Irish recruits in a city where at least 4 major mission colleges opened from 1814. After serving on the home mission, he made a fresh start in a vicariate of British Guiana. Catholic emancipation in 1829 restored to British and Irish Catholics most rights and freedom lost after the Reformation. Liberated Irish clergy were free to answer the Pope's call that British Catholic subjects be missionaries within the British imperial ambience. Mcnamara's clerical contemporaries were tough and welcomed the challenge, although seminary confinement came to distance them from their roots. Priests, nuns, and religious orders became Ireland's export to the English-speaking world. There you got it. That's the purpose. That's the same thing with the Mexicans today. It's not about or against any Mexican. It is just that they wanted to Catholicize the United States.
Oh, not just the United States, apparently. It goes on to say Australia, too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Mission. Huh? Mission. No, the office for propaganda fide. So the head office is, of course, where? In the Vatican. Propaganda fide archives, Rome, SRC Americas, etc. Yeah, from that book, Colonizers, Missioners, Trades, and Cannons. In Rome, Cardinal Franzoni, prefect of the Missions Directorate, Propaganda Fide, had already ordered Clancy to resign and the papal gendarmerie to confine him to Rome. Ecclesiastical Rome had its national subcultures, the intelligence hub of the clerical world. Central Intelligence Agency. This is only for the United States, but the Universal Intelligence Agency is Propaganda Fide in the Vatican.
Correct.
It's the mother ship, the battleship of the Catholics in Action, or Central Intelligence. The Office of for the Propagation of the Faith. Once again. This is a very interesting book, and you see that if you really think about it, it is just exchangeable. If it is in California or in Massachusetts or in New York or in Idaho or in Maryland or whatsoever, it is about the Catholic dominance. It's about that the Catholics get their dominance back, and therefore you see that it was forbidden to celebrate Christmas. And look at the United States now with Coca-Cola and ho ho and White Christmas and all the BS. Then
talk about propaganda, Michael.
Yeah, talk about propaganda here.
Yeah,
yeah, it's all about for the love of money, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all about the money. Here you got another man. It's called Robert Strange. It's a very strange name. Robert Strange Mcnamara. Yeah, he was a foreign, he was a defense minister from 1961 to 68, also under the presidency of John F. Kennedy, and also the president of the World Bank. Robert Strange Mcnamara. Mcnamara means, ancestry coming from Great Britain somewhere. Mcnamara. Sounds a little bit Scottish. Yeah, and he was also in the Greek Letter Society, Phi Beta Kappa. They know that it was for the Freemasonry community. Yeah, as we have learned in Codeword Babylon, Brett, and I have used that in my German session number 150 about the Swedish pop group ABBA. Björn likes it the Greek way, because Björn also was a member of a Greek Letter Society, and I highly suggest that he still is a Freemason up to this very day.
Oh, isn't that interesting? I see some kind of correlation between literary societies now and literary movements.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought there. But no surprise. I mean, you have to put it out there. You have to, what do we say, make the world change subtly the meanings of different words and things like that. I mean, this is really, it's not what you would think on its surface,
Yeah, and the first one, the original one, was called Phi Beta Kappa, was established in 1776. Oh, interesting year. So right from the beginning, they were undermining the Constitution.
Oh, absolutely. And also with the first so-called president of the United States.
Yeah, Freemason, yes. And
not just a Freemason. Right, correct. You know where we're going.
Yeah, it's your president. Yeah, so please.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, George Washington. Yeah, he was also a member of the Society of Cincinnatus.
Yeah, we talked about that second to that session or so.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting stuff, Michael.
Yeah. And so Ireland and Jesuits, they have very much things in common. For example, there is a very small town called Cobb. Never heard? Oh, maybe you have never heard of it, but maybe you have then a connection to it if you see what was happening there. Remember a white star line? It's
of course, yes.
A lucky escape from the Titanic with the Irish priest, Father Brown.
Right, that's right.
Because they were not getting the direct way from Great Britain to the United States. No. they made here a kind of a stationary approach in Queenstown. It's now Queenstown, but it was named Cobb. Yeah. And we know there was a Father Brown, a lucky escape. That was a so-called photographic event, and he had a lucky escape. And he was presented a ticket for that steamliner Titanic, unsinkable. When there would be a ship which was unsinkable, Brett, it was not the Titanic, but Noah's Ark.
Yes, there you go. There you go.
Because it was under the protection of God.
Well, there's some real biblical thinking there, Michael.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's Father right. Browns was ordered off that ship by his provincial, so by his direct supreme in the hierarchy, clergy supreme. Yeah, so his own account said he was his first travel with the big ocean steamliner in the April months in Dublin, Ireland, once again in 1912. Yeah, the Jesuit novice Frank Brown has given a surprise gift by postal mail for 2 days, traveling on the biggest steamship of the world. This is Queenstown. You see that here, and now it's Cobb, so it's the other way around. Sorry, and this is quite frankly the Titanic. Yeah, a pass from Southampton to Queenstown with the SS Titanic, and we trust you will have an enjoyable trip. Because he was, he did not had any parents. He was an orphan, yeah. So therefore, he had a big, rich uncle Robert, which happens to be by accident the Bishop of Cloney. Oh, how convenient, huh? A rich uncle. A bishop is a rich man. Is interesting, huh? What does the Bible say? There was something about rich men's and. Please help me, Alfred.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about
the needle.
Oh, yeah. It's easier for a rich man to enter through the eye of a needle than to enter the kingdom of God. Is that it?
Yeah. But it's just that the rich bishop, of course, Catholic have an exemption always because they combine spiritual and worldly power, or spiritual and material power. Spirits in the material world, huh? Yeah. Father Brown. And this is the very nice Father E. O'Donnell S.J., the biographer of Father Brown. Yeah, extremely trustworthy person because he's a Jesuit. And he says, oh yes, Uncle Robert, so he is related to that. Uncle Robert was very interested in photography. He was handing over Frank different cameras. Yeah, sure, one better than the other. And the pictures that Frank made on his travel from Southampton to Cobb or Queenstown, yeah, that these were the unique documents of the maiden traveling of the Titanic, the biggest ship of the world. And so he had a recommendation letter with Irish charm, and he was befriended with the chef steward Hugh McElroy on the left side, which has been seen, can be seen here besides Captain Smith. And he allows him the entrance and the access to the entire ship. Interesting. He had the first class ticket for cabin 37A. When he received the plan of the ship to look out for his cabin, he unfolded the big chart and he couldn't find 37A. And 37B. And although it was, according to the headline, the plan of the Titanic, he was viewing and says, oh no, this is the plan for the Olympic. So that means that the Titanic, according to the narration of that Jesuit, was a plan for the Olympic. And you know that many people are suggesting, oh, there was an insurance fraud. It was not the Titanic, but the Olympic, because the Olympic was the brother ship of the Titanic. And she was being damaged before. So I don't know what's up with it. We see that never trust a Jesuit.
Yeah, right.
But
right.
By so-called accident, you find that gems, huh?
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So my cabin has been not been indicated here. Yeah, and he says my suite wasn't here, my bedroom, my bath, and my living room. Yeah, so bathroom, sitting room with I cannot read that properly. Yeah, so that he had to sign it in, because that was the wrong plan. So maybe a hint, I don't know. When he was going to dinner in to the first class dining room, he was sitting beside the American pair or couple, sorry, couple it is, who were extremely rich. So it seems so rich that they offered, well, we pay you for the rest of the travel to New York if you stay with us, if you accompany us. Then Frank Brown was then accompanying the American couple to the so-called Marconi room. You saw that Marconi is the so-called inventor of the apparatus here for the radio transmission, where later Nikola Tesla claimed that it was his invention, if you remember that from the Science is the New Religion script. Yeah, so they were all going into the so-called Marconi room, from where they sent a telegram to his provincial in Dublin, of course, to ask for permission that he could stay on board. Yeah, this photo says, and it is absolutely not correct, I know that, it says it was the only one from the Marconi room which had ever been taken from the Titanic. Yeah, when they received Cobb in Ireland or Queenstown, yeah, the last stop of the Titanic, Mr. Father Brown, the Jesuit, received a very rude answer. He was showing the telegram, which was consisted out of 5 words: "Get off that ship, provincial." And so when he was mentioning provincial, I know that it was an official order by the church. He was not speaking as his uncle, as a relative. He was speaking in his official supreme position. Get off that ship, provincial. You can easily sort it out if you look up that video. Yeah. So Frank's photo were the last of his Titanic collection, and he was meeting Mr. McElroy, and he says goodbye. You receive your pictures when you return. Have a pleasant ride, or trip, or ship, or what else. Yeah, so the papers were then using the official photographs of Father Brown, a Jesuit, the first unclouded hours of Titanic fatal voyage. After the drowning of the Titanic, they were published in many, many newspapers, and Frank's pictures are the only complete document of the first and the last travel of the Titanic. Yeah, and he found that pictures in the archives of the Jesuits in the basement. Of course, why? Because Father Brown happens to be a Jesuit priest, and they found that by accident in the basement. Yes, we have to believe that. You have to believe that these unique pictures are just being stored in any basement, as well as you see these scrolls for the Codex Sinaiticus by Mr. Tischendorf were accidentally been found in a monastery somewhere, huh, Brett?
Right.
Just out of an accident. Yeah.
Just an accident, right?
Yeah, just an accident, by accident, yes.
They were in a bin, weren't they? In a bin that they were using as kindling for the fireplace or something like that?
Yeah, something like this, yeah. I don't know if it was, I think it was a monastery. I cannot recall.
Monastery, correct, yes.
It was a monastery, yeah.
I think so,
yeah. So he says, this narrator says, 1984, I was living in a Jesuitical house in Donnybrook in the Eglinton Road, where the Jesuit archive was being in the basement. Yeah, and I asked myself, what could be in this big cage or department? When I was opening, it was one of the best. You see Father's brown tray. It was one of the best moments of my life, and blah blah blah. Yeah, that is like the discovery of the scrolls of the Dead Sea. La 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 la. Yeah, and this was the Father Edward MacDonald talking about the photographic adventure of Father Brown, who was then ordered off that ship. Get off that ship. Even if the traveling would have been for free, he was ordering his relative from the ship because he absolutely knew spot on that the ship would sink. Yeah. And there are many, many, many other things to come. Yeah, you see. Yeah, Kennedy is a very household name in Ireland. You see that. You see that they had a Eucharistic Congress in Dublin, the procession from the roof of Kennedy and McSherry's. Yeah. Speaking of an obelisk.
Yeah. Yep.
You're speaking of Dublin, the main capital, the capital of Ireland. Yeah. So this is the route of the Titanic. This is where the ship allegedly. There's a series of criminal movies called Father Brown. There are many, many, many things. Father Brown, Pater Brown, Father Brown, and also a German one, a very famous movie star in Germany, Heinz Rühmann. Nobody knows him, of course, in the United States, but nevertheless from the 1950s. And he was portraying Father Brown, who was a kind of a detective also. And it was very astonishing when I came across one image of him. It's about Father Brown. It's the black sheep, and you see that he's kind of a major detective. Yeah. See, it was very highly regarded in the 1950s. The black sheep. Yeah. Was it murder? Yeah. So it is about murder. He's kind of a detective, and it's interesting that he reads a book. Yeah, was it murder? Has something to do with the murder happening on sea. You see that? Yeah, what a coincidence! And it's getting better. Yeah, the second book of Mr. Thomas More, who wrote that book, is Cabin Number B55. So it has something to do with the ship once again. But it's getting better. It's getting better. It's getting better. That's the author who wrote this Father Brown novels. Of course, Roman Catholic. The telegram of Pope Pius regarding his death. So he was highly proclaimed. He was being called a saint. Yeah, some kind of a saint. I have to look it up what it actually is in English. Beatification. Sorry, but nevertheless, you see that he was not an ordinary writer. So he wrote about Father Brown. Yeah, so very interesting. Yeah, he was called Fidei Defensor, so the defender of the faith. Yeah. Yeah. He was writing about Thomas of Aquin, Charles Dickinson, Robert Louis Stevenson, etc. But I wanted to show you something. Not this. Yeah, this is the telegram for the inventor of the Father Brown novels. Holy Father, deeply grieved death, Mr. Gilbert Keith Chesterton, devoted son, Holy Church, gifted defender of the Catholic faith, stop. His Holiness offers paternal sympathy, people of England assures prayers, dear departed bestows. Apostolic benediction, Cardinal Pacelli. Oh, Pacelli. Eugenio Pacelli?
Oh.
Maybe. I don't know, but would fit in within the time, I think. Would have to look it up, but you see, once again, it's about a murderer. It's about a so-called priest of the. Yeah, now look at this, where he's preaching from, huh? Look at this. And this is Father Brown. You see, Father Brown, and that Father Brown was also the name of the priest of the Titanic, and he was also a Jesuit. So I don't think that these are all coincidences here. I don't think so. Yeah, that these people also rule at sea or on sea. Yeah. So during the time when the Titanic sank, the Pope Pius X said, not the Pope, but the Cardinal Secretary Mary de Val hopes that the monarchy will go to the utmost. Yeah. And also Francis Rooney, who was studying at the Georgetown University and was ambassador of the United States in the Vatican. Yeah, Francis Rooney on the left side, and the audience has Pope Benedict XVI with Laura Bush, second from right here, and her daughter Barbara. He was writing a book of the Global Vatican. In the Global Vatican, you also see that he was writing that the Catholic Church Franklin took Pamphilia's query to Congress. The response, dated May the 11th, 1784, is preserved in a folio in the archives of the Propaganda Fidei section of the Vatican. Who knows how the Vatican came to possess a copy, but it must have delivered quite a shock when it arrived. Yeah. So he's always also mentioning propaganda fide in his book.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that it highly underestimated the Vatican as a political power in the world, if I remember correctly. And I know that Tom Frass did almost, I think, 100 readings of that book.
Yeah, they are trying to tell you of the soft power that the Vatican wields. It's a power of influence.
Yeah. Yeah, and propaganda means the committee of cardinals in charge of foreign missions. And we know that missions means sending out agents as a Jesuit and comes from Jesuit. Also, so a committee of cardinals in charge of foreign sending outs of Jesuit agents. Yeah, so that is a secret service when it is about agents. Yeah, and so this is the headquarter of all the secret services of the world. Means this is the mothership or the supreme commander of the CIA in Rome. Collegium Verbanium de Propaganda Fide. And this is a spear. Huh? At least it looks fine. Okay, this of course this is for the flag, but nevertheless, I say that this propaganda fide is the head of all the secret services.
The papal flag, Michael. Yeah, right.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and then you see that Edward Bernay's propaganda fide. Yeah, you see, he was using the word propaganda when propaganda itself has the origin of 1718. Yeah, so he was using a Catholic or Jesuitical term. And because propaganda was been seen as a very bad light, especially after then the German minister of so-called education and propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, who wanted to become a priest and studied Jesuitical seminaries in the Netherlands, Edward Bernays decided to rename the thing in public relations. So every public relation agency nowadays has also the roots in propaganda because it's just another name for the same content.
Correct.
Yeah, this book has been published 200 years after then the beginning of the meaning of propaganda was being seen as Catholic in the origin. So this is all about the spreading of the faith of Catholic. And you see that if you then see it not in an average term for the general people, but you see that in the content of the agents of the Catholic Church, yeah, then it makes much more sense. Then they speak about those who manipulate the unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of the country. So when he speaks about propaganda, he speaks about Catholic Jesuitical agents, and they are forming an invisible government. You see, when you add 2 and 2, you get usually 4. Yeah. And Netflix also been run from Mark Randolph's uncle, yeah. And he was an uncle of Edward Bernays. So Netflix also has something to do with the Roman Catholic Church. They're all just coming from Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays was sent to the Vatican by Cardinal Spellman to practice how the Jesuits invented and produced propaganda, and he had a private meeting with the Pope of the Third Reich, meaning Eugenio Pacelli, the one who signed the Concordat to the German Reich in 1933, which is up to this very day still existing and intact and running, and everything is fine. So Edward Bernays met with the Jesuits in the Vatican in 1957, the same year as the 1957 papal bull Miranda Prorsus to our venerable brethren, the patriarchs, primates, archbishops, bishops, and other ordinaries in peace and communion with the apostolic see on motion pictures, radio, and television. Was that the same that Mr. Goebbels used in the Third Reich?
Mm-hmm. Sounds right.
Yeah, motion picture, television, radio, film, music, news, journalism, press, sound, design, art, branding, marketing, video games, broadcast, etc. The entire world for the Vatican. Media comes from Medio-Persia. These are the priestly tribes of the Medo-Persians. No, I think that 99.9% of the people actually does not know where media comes from. This is Miranda Prozos. In that Vatican decree here, Miranda Prozos. Or encyclical letter, sorry, want to have it spot on. They're speaking about this special power which television enjoys of giving pleasure within the family circle is to be reckoned of very great importance, since it can contribute a great deal to the religious life. Ah, so it is a kind of worship. So I have not forgotten it, but I did not instantly recognize it. So you see that propaganda and mission, it's quite the same. Propaganda means missions, yeah, and missions means agents. So it's the same. If you combine that, and you got mission control, then you'd be at the NASA team on ground responsible directing the spacecraft. Yeah, but it is nevertheless it is mission. Yeah, so it's a missionaries. They are missionaries.
It's a different kind of mission. That's all.
It's a different kind of mission. Yeah, therefore you got here the sigma, which means 80, which means 666. Yeah, we have done that also. We covered that in Science is the New Religion. Yeah, also these three nails have something to do with that. Actually, it's also the chemical symbol of silver. Oh, there are so much to it, but yeah, NASA. Yeah, so you see that this is just no coincidence that the Kennedy family was having a good time in Boston, because there were many Irish immigrants there. And therefore, he was going on a road to become a president. Yeah, and in the next session, we are going into the times that John Kennedy and Churchill first met quite years before he went on to become an ambassador in the United Kingdom. Because they have also private ties, and not only with Churchill. You will be very surprised to learn that. So far, so good. I hope you have enjoyed our trip, 90 minutes into the origin of why you got now 3 American presidential nominees who happens to be Irish Catholics. This are Alfred E. Smith, John F. Kennedy, and Joe Biden. And don't think that this is a coincidence, because of course they have to use people from Catholic origin from Europe, because they are much more bound, I think, in my humble opinion, to the Pope than Native Americans, who were not being under the yoke or under the influence of the papal supremacy in the Middle Ages. So far that's me for session 7. I hope you had a good time, or at least it was a little bit of interesting. It was maybe a little bit of dry with but I can promise that when we have set a solid foundation with sessions 8 and 9, later on we will go extensively into Kennedy, and then expressively in very detail into the assassination on Kennedy. Why? By whom, how, and what's the background of it. And I discovered so many interesting details that I rarely come across, and I think that there are some things upon that which you will never come across on any website, because I try to have some fresh content that you really see what's it all about, and we are here to connect the dots in a biblical way. So you see that when it is not about the representatives of the ordinary people, then these politicians, they have their own agenda, and after their agenda, or behind their agenda, behind the curtain, is, in the case of the 3 mentioned presidential nominees, is the Roman Catholic Church. So thank you very much for having me, and hand it over to my beloved brother Brett.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Yeah, I was just trying to look up a little something to end with, and I was thinking about, what Jesus had told us, that, he is not of this world. Therefore, those of us that are adhering to his word and taking it very seriously, those of us are not really of this world either, are we now? We are coming out of this world, and we are observing and we are testifying of the things. Because remember what the Bible also says about every idle word a man says shall be given an account in the judgment. So therefore, we must be very, very keen when we speak spiritually in the manner of our faith, in the manner of our life with Christ, our walk with Christ. So yeah, Matthew 12:32 speaks, and whosoever speaketh a word against the Son of Man, it shall be forgiven him. That means when you curse. But whosoever speaketh against the Holy Ghost, it shall not be forgiven him, neither in this world, neither in the world to come. So there's a world to come. And we being followers of Christ, we are to take the time to look at these topics which Michael has mentioned very differently, because the way they've been presented to us, we are not allowed to question in that environment, in the school environment, you know, being a child, being raised up in these, what can we say? What's the Bible call it now? In the rudiments of the world, if I'm not mistaken, in Colossians 2, chapter 2, verse 8, yes. So yeah, Michael, thank you. Looking forward to next time. Hope all are doing well in the body of Christ. God be with you, and Maranatha.